Guess what? They let me perform in Chicago. Hold on, come over here, come here. Hey! They let me perform in Chicago! What's wrong with you? This gonna be the best Gemini Cancer Bash ever. Hold on, come here. They let me perform in Chicago! Hold on, let me call my mama. Hold on. Hello? Mom! Get ready for the grand opening! Mama! It's a Monday and Sunday. They said June 24th, I could perform at V-Live! Me! I'm Mom. Ooh, Mom. Slide!
Robert Yummy Sandifer was an 11-year-old African-American boy from Chicago, Illinois. Sandifer's murder by fellow gang members in Chicago garnered national attention because of his age, not because of his race, resulting in his appearance on the cover of Time magazine in September of 1994. This young man was born March 12th of 1983, and he died September 1st of 1994 in Roseland, Chicago. Yummy Sandifer's death was the cause of gunshot wounds, and he was a criminal, and he was as deceased. His mother, Lorena Sandifer, and his father, Robert Atkins, criminal charges were for murder, arson, and drug possession. Yummy Sandifer, at the time, after committing murder, arson, and armed robbery, he was murdered by his own fellow gang members who feared he could become an informant. And at that time, he was attracting too much attention towards their activities. Coverage of Sandifer's death and the retrospectives on his short violent life were widely published in the American media. Sandifer became a symbol of the gang problem in American inner cities, of the failure of social safety nets, and the shortcomings of the juvenile justice system. In the shortcomings of Yummy Sandifer's death, me being from Chicago, Illinois myself, never heard such a passionate man speak about this young man's murder, unjustly murder, other than the rapper Tupac Shakur. He gestured in his interview how painful it was to see Yummy Sandifer gunned down by his own peers. This is the way I learned of Yummy Sandifer in my own city. Such a pity. Robert Sandifer was born in Chicago, Illinois on March 12, 1983, and Sandifer's mother, Lorena Sandifer, had over 30 arrests while prostituting, many of which were drug-related. Sandifer's father, however, Robert Atkins, was absent throughout Sandifer's life due to incarceration for a felony for gun charges. Sandifer was physically abused from the time he was an infant. Before he was 3 years old, Sandifer was already known to the Department of Children and Family Services, known in Chicago as DCFS. Physical examinations showed that Sandifer was allegedly to have been burned by cigarettes on his arms, necks, as well as his linear. Bruising consisted with physical beatings. Lorena initially blamed the abuse on Sandifer's father, although she later recanted that statement. Sandifer, by the age of 8, quit attending school and began to roam the streets. He was stealing cars and breaking into houses. At the age of 10, Sandifer was arrested on charges of armed robbery, and a psychological examiner at the time reported that Robert is a child growing up without any encouragement and support, and that he has sense of failure, and that has infuriated almost every aspect of his life. In 1993, Sandifer and his siblings were removed from his grandmother's home, and they were sent to live at the Lawrence Hall DCFS shelter, and that is located on Chicago's north side, from which Sandifer ran away and never returned. From 1993 until his death, Sandifer's whereabouts and living arrangements remained unclear, although he continued to be arrested by authorities. On August 28th of 1994, Sandifer was ordered to do a favor for his gang. He opened fire several times with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, striking several youths. Sandifer quickly fled the scene. Among his victims was a 14-year-old girl named Siobhan Dean, who was fatally hit by a stray bullet. The crime spree made national headlines. The nation was shocked by the brutality of the crime and the fact that the alleged perpetrator was only 11 years old. The Chicago police began a manhunt for Sandifer, and according to Sergeant Ronald Palmer of the Chicago Police Department, Sandifer's actions were a gang initiation gone wrong. On August 31st, while standing on a neighbor's porch after asking to call his grandmother, in whom he had the greatest trust, Sandifer was met by brothers Greg and Derek Hardaway, ages 16 and 14 at that time, and they both were members of the Black Disciple Street Gang. Sandifer was told he was being taken to a safe location and ordered into a waiting car. Instead, this baby was taken to a railroad underpass at East 108th Street and South Dauphine Avenue and was told to get on his knees. While kneeling, Sandifer was shot twice in the back of the head by the Hardaway brothers. Sandifer's body was discovered by the Chicago Police Department in the early morning of September 1st. Around 400 people attended Sandifer's funeral, which was held at the Youth Center Church of God in Christ on Chicago's northwest side. The Hardaway brothers were later convicted of Sandifer's murder. Derek Hardaway, age 14 at the time of Sandifer's murder, received a sentence of 45 years, and he was released in December of 2016. 25 years later this week, a scrawny boy known as Yummy Sandifer, grimly from the cover of Time magazine, the rock-bottom embodiment of Chicago's entrenched gang affiliation and the affliction. Robert Sandifer, whose sweet tooth gave him his nickname, lived in Tough Roseland on the south side. He stood 5'6" tall, and he was only 68 pounds. And at the age of 11, he wore a forearm tattoo tagging him as a member of the Black Disciples Gang. On August 28th of 1994, a gang boss put a 9mm pistol to Robert Yummy's hand and directed him to shoot members of a rival crime gang clan called the Gangster Disciples, known in Chicago, Illinois as the GDs. The boy carried out his assignment that evening and he wounded 2 enemies, and those teens were Kenyatta Britton and Sammy Sayai. And these 2 shootings were in ambush shootings within a block of his own home at West 107th Place. In seconds after the attack, a stray bullet found a bystander, and her name was Siobhan Dean, and she was only 14 years old, and she was killed instantly on the spot. Those witnesses and victims fingered the shooter, and they told the police, "Yummy did it, Yummy did it." Assault and homicide by a boy who would not necessarily have impelled Robert to the nationwide infamy of 1994, Sino crack cocaine dealers in many cities sought to insinuate themselves for justices by using kids to do their own dirty work. No, Yummy ascended to national news because of what came next. So at the time, a Black Disciple crew leader reckoned that the Nev Robert was likely to squeal under police interrogation, meaning the gang members thought that by Yummy being so young, he would initially tell on them, and they wanted him to take the rap because they thought at the time, by him being 11 years old, that he would get no time for doing crimes for them. They were wrong. The gang tasked and another member, Craig Hardaway, 16, with nipping that possibility in the bud, as they told the detectives. After 3 days in hiding, Robert surfaced and briefed in Roseland late on August 31st after that shooting, and he was swept away in an Oldsmobile. He was not taken in by authorities, however. It was the older ganger members who told him to do their dirty work. A loner from the gang leader Kenny Stump by Hardaway and his brother Derek at that time was 14 years old. They promised him a safe haven outside of the city, but the trip was over a mile long. As the younger brother sat in the idling Oldsmobile, Craig Hardaway walked Robert Yummy into an isolated pedestrian tunnel beneath the tracks at the eastern boundary of the neighborhood. Derek Hardaway later said that he heard that those 3 shots went off before Craig scrambled back in the car, and a passerby found the body at 12:22 a.m. on September 1st. Detective noted that Robert was murdered with the ice-cold efficiency of a seasoned hitman, 2 .25 caliber slugs to the back of his head. Times headline summarized his life as an in-depth, so young to kill, so young to die. And as on Dickerson, he quoted that his life was full and brief. What you got here is a kid who made and turned into a psychopath by the time he was 3 years old. Patrick Murphy, Chicago Public Guardian, said this. He was a free-range kid. He was raised superficially by his grandmother following an abandonment by his mother, a prostitute, and his father was a drug dealer felon, and he was imprisoned in Wisconsin. He rarely attended school, and he was functionally illiterate. Chicago Mayor Richard Daley claimed that Robert Yummy had slipped through the cracks, but that was really not true at that time. Child welfare authorities were too all familiar with Robert, who had a long record of an incredible he was a delinquent in their eyes, and the caseworkers had chronicled that his physical and mentality, that he was mental. They said he had a mental problem. And Robert's body bore dozens of scars and torture and beatings, a total of 49 according to his autopsy report. And it was included cigarette burns on his butt, neck, knees, arms, snake-like wounds from electricity cord whippings. How do we know that these gang members were not torturing him as well and carrying out that abuse to this baby? So a psychological exam at his state shelter months before his murder concluded that Robert was angry, he was discouraged, and he was very confused. He had a sense of failure that was infuriating almost every aspect of his inner life, and that examiner wrote that again. And he felt validated as a member of the Black Disciples, but the gang pushed his law-breaking from petty to grand, and he was in police custody about 30 times in the last 18 months of his life, and including 23 felonies this baby had. He was judged too young, and he was vulnerable for being a juvenile and sent to juvenile homes. He was released. He was sent to his grandmother. He was sent here and there, and everything was chaotic, and the house was crammed. There was too many children. There were at least 10 to 30 children at his grandmother's house at the time, so he could not receive the attention that he so duly needed. And his murder was no mystery. Eyewitnesses saw Hardaway brothers drive off with Robert 45 minutes before the boy was killed, and Derek, in custody just 8 hours later, confessed to his role as the wheelman and fingered Craig as the shooter. So their involvement came as a shock to their parents, the teachers, computer engineers, and both brothers were honor students, and they seemed to be on their way to college at that time, quoted the family. But like Robert himself, the Hardaways became exhibits in the juvenile super detonators of mania in the 1990s. Okay, so I really feel bad for Yummy. I had to do this story, and I can't believe that this guy was sentenced to 45 years. He was 14. He was a child himself, and these gang members had these young babies doing their bids and their dirty work, and then had to kill them to get rid of them. It's just a hard world out here, and I'm glad that Yummy got justice and we found out who killed him, although a lot of gang members in Chicago are shot down and killed every single day, and their murders go unsolved. So Yummy opened up the caliber for the drill and for these rappers. He really did. He was not rapping. He was just out here a baby. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, he got took down before these rappers. You know what I'm saying? 1983 and 80, okay. He would have been like 38, 39 today, guys. So I just had to bring this story. This was a travesty. They placed this baby on the cover of Times Magazine which helped, and it didn't really help so much because you don't see King Von, you don't see FBG Duck on the cover of Times. So Yummy really opened a pathway. We got to keep our boys safe, guys. 11 years old, he had no business out there on the streets. But me actually telling you guys what the backstory was, you can see why. He had no support. He had no love. He had no father. His father was incarcerated himself. So much love to Tupac. Rest in peace, Tupac. Because had it been for Tupac, I wouldn't have known about Yummy Sandifer. And I was living in Chicago at that time. Tupac was very passionate about this boy, and it really hurt him to know of this story. And there are a lot of Yummies around the world today, but this baby right here was too young. 11? He was 64 pounds? Really? Okay, guys, so please like the video, comment on the video, and subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell so once I drop a new video, you guys will be aware. Until the next video, take care, guys.